We may be less than 6 hours from the polls closing in New York and 3 months away from the Republican convention, but the bidding for delegates, should I say bidding or should I say wooing? Wooing has already started, because if Donald Trump fails to secure the nomination on the first ballot, many of the delegates will then be free to vote however they please, and that's where the bidding and the wooing comes in. Candidates are reportedly allowed, it's legal, to pay a delegate's convention expenses, including airfare and hotel. But it could go a lot further than that. Trump says it's a game he is not going to play.
You're basically saying, delegate, listen, we're going to send you to Mar-a-Lago on a Boeing 757. You're going to use the spa. You're going to this, you're going to that. We want your vote. That's a corrupt system. That has, wait a minute, that has nothing to do with democracy.
Let's bring in Ed Rollins, Fox News political analyst and former principal White House advisor to President Reagan, and Julie Roginsky, a Fox News contributor and Democratic strategist. In your experience, Ed, for many, many years, what kind of wooing have you seen? Give us some anecdotal evidence
The most famous one was the Reagan-Ford battle in 1976, the last contested. Ford was the president. He would fly people in the Oval Office. He'd invite them to state dinners. He'd let them fly in Air Force One. And he took the chairman of the Mississippi delegation and basically took him and put him next to the Queen at a state dinner. He'd pledged his support to Reagan, and he flipped. And basically, that may have been the difference at the end of the day.
The Queen,
can you imagine?
The Queen was probably saying...
Can you imagine? Who's this guy from Mississippi? Clark Reed. And he lived in famously for the rest of his life as the most hated by the Reagan guys. My mentor, Len Nofsaker, would never let him in the White House when he was there.
Not that you have a long memory or anything.
No, I don't know.
I'm glad you do. And looking at all of this from this standpoint of wooing delegates, does Donald Trump have a point here, or is this just the way it is and you're okay with that?
Well, I'm not okay with it, but it's just the way it is. And you know, I don't think you buy anybody drinks at happy hour. There are a lot of people coming, though, who don't have to pay their own expense, don't have a lot of money. They will be very welcome to that. But you're down to, most people take it very, very seriously. And it's just, you know, you're down to, in that particular case, Reagan lost by 117 votes. I doubt that that'll be much of a difference this time. So it's, you really, President Ford gave sewer grants. He gave UMTRA grants. I mean, he had the power. No one has that kind of power, but Trump has a lot of you know, gifts. May not fly on a 747, but you can fly down to Trump 1.
Julie, what do you think happens come the Cleveland convention?
That's a great question. I don't think anybody knows. Look, if it really comes down, I think, to Indiana, assuming that Trump does well enough today in New York to garner most of the delegates, if not all of them.
Not California?
California, he needs to do well as well, but if he doesn't really clean up in Indiana, and if Cruz is allowed to win Indiana, which Cruz right now is positioned to potentially do very well in Indiana, Trump, there's no way Trump is going to the convention with the requisite number of votes, and then you have chaos, and then you have multiple ballots, and then, as Ed would probably agree, you have deal-making of the kind of which we've never seen. I think Ted Cruz potentially emerges as the nominee after all.
Well, I'll ask you, Ed, then what I asked Congressman Lee Zeldin, the Republican from New York, and that is, can you really, if Trump comes within spitting distance, say 30 delegates short of it, can you really take it away from him?
Well, you won't have to. If he gets within 30 delegates, he'll get it. I mean,
okay.
I'm just predicting that. If he comes within 200 delegates, he's going to have a real battle, because a lot of these delegates have been pledged to go for Cruz on a second ballot. That's where the Cruz team has been much more effective at saying, you got to be for Trump because he won the state, but would you vote for our guy because he's a real conservative Republican on the second ballot?
Let me get to the Mitt Romney issue here, because Mitt Romney is suddenly making a lot of noise again. And do you think, Julie, that he's trying to insert himself if there is a contested convention?
He can try. I mean, I understand the bid for relevance, but the reality is, where is he going? I mean, he hasn't been on the ballot. He had a shot. He had a shot twice to try to become president. He failed both times. You know, there's not going to be a knight in shining armor. I can't imagine, if you're a Republican voter of any kind, whoever you supported, why you would actually think that your vote is irrelevant, why some party guys in the back room are going to decide to anoint somebody whose name wasn't even on the ballot, who didn't receive one solitary vote this whole cycle. That is a horrible message to send to the voters.
We've got Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton obviously facing off on the Democratic side. Bernie has been quite an interesting candidate here in New York, wading into huge crowds, high-fiving people. He's become a little bit of a rock star. He walked through the Verizon workers, picket lines. He was walking on the streets of New York City today. Ed, any chance for him?
No, but because we're the same age. I'm very happy to see him out there campaigning away, and they're talking about the young Bernie Sanders versus the old Ed Rollins. But it's an amazing campaign. I don't think anybody gave him a chance when he started, but he's pushed her hard, and he's got a lot of supporters. And I think the long-term problem for the Democratic Party, just like we're going to have problems, is getting these young voters that this is their first vote. It'd be like McCarthy and back in '68. The people get attached to these candidates, and they want some of the things that they want.
Trump and Hillary win on either side tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The question is how big. And the question for Trump is obviously, does he get over 50 in every congressional district, 27 of them in New York? Hillary, does she win by double digits? She needs to. But I said this before on your show. Look, it's not so much about momentum, it's about the math. There's mathematically virtually an impossibility for Bernie Sanders to get this nomination now. He's in it because he's got the money to stay in it. He's in it because he thinks he has a movement. But mathematically, it is becoming increasingly more difficult to win this nomination.
Trump has a giant win. This is going to be his biggest win of the campaign without spending any money. I mean, it's minimal money what he spent on television. He really is a bigger than life player in New York.
Great to see both of you.
Thanks so much.
Ed Rollins, Julie Roginsky. Keep it right here on Fox Business for all your coverage of the battle for the Big Apple.